Hello there, Mark Cunningham here, and in this video I'm going to show you some payroll settings that you need to set up before you start paying your employees in the Australian version of Xero. This lesson is part of a full course, so if you'd like to learn more about Xero, then check out the links in the description below. So let's jump into Xero's demo company now and get started. So we're going to do this in the demo company because there's already some information in the demo company. So just go to settings from the main menu and then go to payroll settings. And we're going to start off here on the organisation tab. So what we've got here is some general ledger accounts that you need to map your payroll to. And when you open up a new Xero account, some of these will already be set up for you. So the bank account might not be if you haven't actually activated a bank account yet. So after you do open up a bank account in Xero, you need to come in and map it to this bank account here because this is going to be the bank account from which you actually pay your payroll. So in the demo company, this one's already hooked up to the business bank account. You can see that savings account there as well. So if we paid the payroll from the savings account, then we would select that one. The next few accounts here, there's a couple of liability accounts and there's a few expense accounts, and you just need to get this mapping right as well. So the first one is your pay-as-you-go withholding tax payable account. So you need to make sure that's a liability, and in Xero it's usually this account here. And then down here there's the wages payable payroll account as well. That's actually a liability account as well. That's not an expense account. And then you've got your superannuation liability account as well. So you need to make sure that one is also a liability account and not an expense. Over here, you've got two expense accounts. You've got wages and salaries expense. So that usually defaults to 477 here in Xero. If you want to use a different one, you can go ahead and create that in your own chart of accounts and you can map it here. And the same thing for superannuation expense. So that's an expense account here. That's the one that Xero usually uses when you first open a Xero file. If you want to use something different, you can go ahead and create it and map it here. Moving down to the next section, we've got some payroll tracking that we can do here. So you can see there's employee groups and there's timesheet categories, and they're both optional, so you don't need to actually choose anything here if you don't want to. But if you do, it just looks up those tracking categories. So you can select one of the tracking categories, and if you wanted to group your employees by those tracking categories, then you could choose it here. And then when you go and put your employees into Xero, you can put them, say, towards a particular region or a particular department if that's the one that you choose. So I'm not going to choose anything here because you don't actually have to, and I don't need to do it for the purposes of this course. Moving down, we've got a couple of payslip options here. So the first one is whether to show the annual salary of your employees on the payslips. So if you tick that box, it will show the annual salary. And you can see here that it only applies to full-time and part-time employees. So it won't apply to casual employees because they don't have an annual salary anyway. You've also got this option here to show the employment basis of your employees on their payslips. So if you tick on that box, it will say whether they're full-time or part-time or casual on their payslips. So that one's up to you as well. Moving further down, you've got the ability to add your company logo to your payslips. So if we just click on the upload logo button, it just gives you a bit of guidance as to what you should actually upload. So you'll want to make it a JPEG or a PNG file under 1 megabyte, and you want to use these particular sizes here for the width and the height if possible. And then once you have that ready, you just click on browse, find it on your device and just hit upload. So I'll just close out of that. Okay, so once you're finished with everything on this page, you can just click on save. Okay, and that's done. All right, so moving on to the calendars tab. And on this tab, what you do is you set up these pay calendars based on when you pay your employees. So you can see here in the demo company, there's a fortnightly calendar and also a weekly calendar, which means that they must pay some people weekly and some people fortnightly. So let's just duplicate the screen and we'll go into payroll and pay employees. And if we just have a look at the pay run history here, you can see that some of the pay runs are based on the weekly calendar and some of them are based on the fortnightly calendar. So you can see here that those are the two bases under which they pay their employees in the demo company here. So I'll just close that and we'll come back over here. So what you can do in your business is you can click on add and you can set up your payroll calendars based on what you need. So you might only need one, but there's two of them here in the demo company. So let's just have a look at how it works. We'll click on add and you just get this box that pops up and it will guide you through the process. So the first thing you do is choose how often you'll pay your employees, and you can see there's quite a few options there. So let's create a monthly one. And you can give it a name. You don't have to call it monthly. So let's just say we pay our executives on a monthly basis. We can just call it executive. Okay, like so. And then down here, we need to choose a start date for this pay period. So I'm in November, so I'm just going to pick the 1st of November, but just make sure whatever you do, you pick the right one for you. And then you've got the first payment date as well. So let's make that the last day of the month. We'll make that the 30th of November. Okay, so just obviously make sure that you get these dates right for whatever you set up for your business. Now you can actually make this your default pay calendar for new employees. So that means when you add a new employee into the system, which we'll do later, the monthly calendar could be the default calendar that comes up for them. You can change it when you're setting up the employee, but obviously it'll want to put some sort of default pay calendar in there. So you'd think that your executive pay calendar would probably not be your default calendar, so we won't tick that. And then just down the bottom here, it just gives you a little bit of verbiage about what you've actually done. So your pay calendar will run monthly, starting on the 1st of November, and employees will be paid on the 30th of November. That will be their first pay. So if that's all right, you can click on add. Okay, and now we've got another pay calendar. Okay, so just over on the side here, each one of these has a little menu and you can go in and edit them. So you can see that you can go in there and you can change anything, except you can't change the actual pay period if you go in and edit. So if you make any changes to it, you can just click on update. I'll just cancel out of here. And then you can also set it as the default like we saw before, and you can mark them as inactive as well. So if you're no longer using one, you can mark it inactive, and that will then come down to the bottom of the list and be grayed out. Okay, so that's it for pay calendars. Like I said before, just add whatever you need for your business and then move on to the holidays tab. Okay, so over here in the holidays tab, what we've got is down on the left here, we've got all holidays at the top, and then we've got these groups that are based on the Australian states and territories. So at the moment we've got all holidays selected, and you can see down here on the right we've got a list of all the public holidays that are in the Xero system. And then down the bottom here we've also got a year selector. So whichever year you're looking at, just make sure you select the right one down the bottom first. And then if you go into these groups and you click on a particular group, it will just show you the holidays for that group. So that's for the ACT and that's for Queensland. So you can go through and just check that all the holidays are in there for whatever states and territories you have your employees in and that they need to get paid from. So this is all populated by Xero, so this should all be in here when you open a Xero account. It should be in the demo company and it should be in any business that you open in Australia, so you don't have to go and do it all from scratch, which is great. But if you see any that are missing, then you can add them in. So for example, in Queensland, in Brisbane, there's the Echo Show holiday, and we would need to add that in because it's not in here. It's usually in August. And then other regions within Queensland have their own show holidays and they have them on different dates. So what you could do is you could create a Brisbane region. So if I click on add group, and I just call this Queensland Brisbane, like so. And then I want to add the existing holidays from the Queensland group, so I want those all to be in there at least. So we'll click on add. Okay, so now I've got Queensland Brisbane, which should be exactly the same as Queensland, and it is. Okay, so we've got Queensland Brisbane. So now what I want to do is add the Echo show holiday. So I just click on add holiday, and I'll give it a name. Let's call it Echo, and then I'll just put it to the 15th. No, I won't. I'll put it to the 14th of August, so that's on a Friday, and then I'll click add. Okay, and that's in there now. So that's in Brisbane, but it's not in Queensland because that's a generic Queensland one. So any employees that we assign to the Queensland Brisbane region, they will be entitled to the Echo holiday. So if I also wanted to create one for the Gold Coast, which would have a different show holiday, I could then create the group, copy the holidays over from Queensland, name it Queensland Gold Coast, and then add its show day in there as well. So I'd end up with a bunch of different ones for Queensland based on their region. So you might need to do that as well for whatever state or territory that you're in, if you've got a few different public holidays going on within your state or territory. But hopefully that's not the case, and you can just use these ones that are already set up in Xero for you. So that's the holidays tab. We'll just go now to pay items. Okay, so this is a pretty important section that you need to set up so you can pay your employees properly. We've got a fair bit of stuff set up here in the demo company, but when you open a Xero account with your real business, some of this will be set up in there as well. So you won't just start with a blank sheet, if you like. So the pay items are the things that will basically control how your employees get paid. So they're broken up into these categories. There's earnings, deductions, reimbursements, and leave. And you can see here we're on the earnings tab. And over here we have all these different kinds of earnings. So the main one will most likely be ordinary hours. That's the one that you'll most likely pay people through the most. And you can see that that's just ordinary times earnings, and it's a rate per unit. So that will be a rate per hour. And the general ledger account, the expense account, is that salary and wages account 477. And you've also got this setting here that you've got to get right, whether it's reportable as W1. So if you don't know what that is, that's got to do with your activity statements like your BAS and your IAS. And this has got to do with the pay-as-you-go withholding tax. So you need to make sure that when you set these up, you put the right W1 status in there. This ordinary hours one here is actually wrong. That should be yes. Same with the overtime hours there. So if you do need to go in and fix them up, you can just go in and edit. And you can have a look at what you've got here. So you've got ordinary hours as the name, so you can change that. You can also have a display name as well for the pay slips if you want to call it something different. This has been chosen as a rate per unit. You've got hours as the type of units, and then you can hard code in a rate per unit here if you like, but it's unless you pay everybody the exact same hourly rate, you'll want to leave that blank. And as we saw before, you can choose your expense account, so that's wages and salary. And then down the bottom here, this is where you've got a couple of boxes that you need to get right. So this is obviously not going to be exempt from pay-as-you-go withholding tax, so that the government is going to tax this kind of earnings. It's not going to be exempt from super because it's ordinary earnings, and you need to pay the normal amount of super on top of that. And it is actually reportable as W1 on your activity statement, so that should be checked, that box there. So I'll click on save. Okay, and you can see that that's changed to yes. This overtime hours should be the same, so it should be that one there. Accrued leave for this earnings rate, in fact that was ticked there, so I'll just tick on that as well. All right, so you can see you've also got other things in here. You've got redundancy payments, ETPs, allowances. So you might pay different allowances in your business for certain things. There's all kinds of allowances that you can set up. And just up the top here, I'll just show you that this is where you can go to actually add them. So if you add something that's ordinary time or overtime, etc., it will bring up that screen that I just showed you before. So let's actually add another overtime earnings. So if we come down here and we look at the one we've got here, you can see that this is 1.5 times ordinary times earnings. So we'll just set up another one and we'll make it double time. Okay, so let's call this overtime hours, and I'll just say times 2. We won't worry about a different display name, that's fine. We'll make this a multiple of employees' ordinary earnings rate, and we want it to be twice their ordinary earnings rate. The expense account should be that 477 that we saw before. It's not exempt from tax, it is exempt from super, it is reportable as W1, and you can accrue leave on this one as well. So we'll click on add. Okay, so now we have this overtime earnings down here times 2, as well as the one there that's 1.5. So there's all kinds of earnings pay items that you can create. So obviously we're not going to go through them all here. You just need to make sure that you set up your allowances and your rates, etc. And of course, if you're making people redundant or you've got ETPs or anything like that going on, you've got to set those up in here as well. So deductions. So this is where you can go to set up your employee deductions. If you're familiar with this sort of thing, you can have quite simple ones like union fees and subscriptions, but you can also have things like pre-tax and post-tax deductions for salary sacrificing. And this is where it all goes. So once again, you need to make sure all of the settings are right, whether they reduce PAYG, for example, which you've got there for pre-tax deductions, that would be yes. And then you've got whether it reduces the superannuation guarantee scheme. So you need to make sure that's right as well. And again, you've got exclude from W1. And again, you need to make sure they're all right. If you click on add, you can add a few different kinds of them there as well. So again, I can't go through comprehensive lessons on all the different kinds of deductions that you can set up, but you just need to go through one by one and make sure you've got them set up. Reimbursements. Okay, so this is where you might reimburse your staff for things like travel costs that they incur. So this is a fairly simple one. If you click on add, you can just give it a name and then you can select an account. Okay, so you can see here this one uses the expense account and this one uses the travel national account. And then you can go in and edit these as well if you need to. So there should be a few of those set up in your Xero file when you first open it, but obviously go through and set up any others that you need. And then finally you've got leave. Okay, and just like earnings and deductions, there's all different kinds of leave you can have. So this annual leave here, this is one that you'll most definitely need to set up. Let's just have a look at how it's set up here in the demo company. That's just the name and then the hours. And then down here, you've got the normal entitlement. So this is the number of units the employee is entitled to each year. So you need to make sure you get that one right, whether you've got, say, a 38-hour week or a 40-hour working week. You need to work out how many hours they're entitled to in a whole year and put that in there. And then there's also a little option down here as to whether you want to show the balance on the payslip. So this will be the balance of their leave accrual for annual leave. So people might like to see how much leave they've got accrued. And if you put that on there, it would probably save you from fielding questions as well. It's optional. You don't have to put it on the payslip if you don't want to, but just check that box if you do. So I'll just cancel out of here. Okay, and then you've also got whether it's paid leave and whether it's shown on payslip here as well. So down here you've got personal carers leave, so that's what used to be sick leave. that's very similar. If we go into it, you can see there, that's quite similar. It's pretty common to not show that on a payslip, so that's why that's unchecked. And once again, you can just put the annual total allowance right there in that box. And then you've got all these other kinds of leave, and you can see some of them are unpaid, some of them are paid. You just need to go through and set up all the ones that your employees might be entitled to. Okay, so that's the pay items tab. There's quite a lot to it. It might take you a while to set this up for your business, but if you just work through it step by step, you should get there. Let's go to the Superannuation tab now. And on this tab, this is where you set up the superannuation funds that your employees are using and that you need to pay their superannuation into. So there's two here that are set up in the demo company. They're both regulated. So what will happen is when an employee starts working for you, you need to find out what super fund they belong to, and you need to get some details such as the SPIN or the USI, so you can make sure you set up the right fund within the fund, and then you need to add it onto here, and you need to do that before you actually set up the employee in the system, because this is the list from where you will select which super fund they belong to when you're actually setting up the employee. So make sure you do this step first. So what you need to do is just click on Add Superannuation Fund, and then you choose whether it's regulated or self-managed. So we'll choose regulated, and then you can search by the fund name or the USI. So let's just search by the name. All right, so I just put Colonial in there, and you can see there's a whole bunch of Colonial funds in there. So this is what I mean by a fund within a fund. So you need to make sure you pick the right one. So let's just say that our employee is using this one. Okay, and then it's actually populated the USI there. We could have actually searched by the USI. If we had it, we could have typed that in there and it would have come up with this one. You can also put an employer number in there. So if you as an employer have a unique number, you can put it in there. It's only optional, you don't need to do it. So if you don't have one, don't do it, and then just click on Add. Okay, and now that one is there on your list. So when you go to add your employee in, you can select this from the list of super funds. You can also add self-managed super funds, and there's a bit more information to put in there. So if any of your employees have a self-managed fund, you need to get the fund name, you need to get the ABN, you need to get this electronic service address alias as well. You don't need to put an employer number in there, but you can if you have one. And then down here, you just need the bank details as well. So when you go to make your super payments, it goes into the right bank account, because every self-managed super fund will have its own bank account. So I'm not going to put one in as an example here, because I don't have this information for any particular SMSF, but now you know where all that is if you need it. So I'll just cancel out of there. All right, so that was the Superannuation tab, and that was the last thing that we had to do for our payroll settings. Okay, that's it for this video. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel if you'd like to see more free videos, and also check out the links in the description below for our Xero courses. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.